Testing, testing.
All right. Have you all heard about global warming? Something to do with the Earth getting a bit warmer? Well, of course, judging by the name, that's an easy guess. A little bit more specific would be something to do with what's called the greenhouse effect. Well, what is this greenhouse effect that we keep hearing about? Well, here is an analogy that may help. You can think of the Earth sort of like this car, parked outside on a hot, sunny day. It gets really warm inside, doesn't it? In fact, much warmer inside than the outside temperature. Well, what's happening is, of course, sunlight enters the car through the windows and the windshield carrying energy. Some of that energy gets absorbed by the car seats, the dashboard, the steering wheel, the floor mat, everything. That's why those things get really hot. And when those things release back some of this energy in the form of heat, not all of that is able to get out. Well, the glass and the roofing are pretty good heat insulators. This creates a difference in the rate at which there is a higher energy coming in, but less rate of energy coming out, which undoubtedly create a rising temperature effect in the car, which makes it inside warmer than the outside temperature. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is sort of like the greenhouse effect. When sunlight from the space enters the Earth through the atmosphere, just like how it enters the car through the windows and the windshield, some of this energy gets absorbed by the oceans, the mountains, the forests, basically landmass, just like how your car seat and your dashboard absorbs heat. And similarly, when these things release back some of the energy gets back out into space, but some gets absorbed by the molecules in the air and also molecules in the atmosphere, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and of course, water vapor. The effect is what's similar to what happened to your car. The amount of energy coming to the Earth is more than the rate of energy coming out. What this does is similar to what it does to your car. It helps to keep the Earth's surface warmer than it would be in outer space. So the next time you hear someone say greenhouse effect or greenhouse gases, remember that it's not all a bad thing. In fact, it's what's keeping us alive by helping to create the Earth's surface temperature warmer than it would be in outer space, without which it would be something like Mars, extremely cold during the night and extremely hot during the day. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.
Questions or feedback from the judges?
How can man interfere?
Sorry?
How can mankind, interfere with that natural order of things that you have just said? Because if it's man-induced increase of warming, then man should find a way to reduce the warming.
Sure. A very excellent comment. Now let me reiterate that the greenhouse effect is actually a greenhouse theory. Right? Given a theory, it can still be debatable and it can be disproved. And you're right. What causes greenhouse effect is, of course, the greenhouse gases. What you're referring to is what's called the anthropogenic greenhouse effect, meaning man-made greenhouse effect. And some skeptics argue that the change that's happening is actually could be natural. If you were to expand the time scale to 1,000 years, for example, it's actually a normal cycle. But the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change says that the increase in CO2 might be related to the rise in CO2 released since the Industrial Revolution since the 1700s. So what happens is, what they say is that an increase from about 280 parts per million CO2 to about just under 400, and a degree of increase in temperature of 0.74. So in a way, it's still debatable whether really did man cause greenhouse effect or not. But what's not debatable is that the temperature is really increasing.
are we not taking opportunity from all that? For example, if I take your car as an example, recently I bought solar, I don't know what you call it, but solar lights for my garden, because my garden is quite dark at night. So I actually charge it in the car. When I park my car, there's sunlight, so I actually charged it. And then at night it will glow. Now, why can't we do something that will benefit us with this greenhouse thing that you just mentioned, if you use that car analogy?
Sorry, I was not clear. So what can we do again?
For example, okay, you use your car as an analogy earlier, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, now, we all talk about this greenhouse effect and all that. Now, instead of looking at it as something negative, many times we argue that it's negative. How can we, in fact, find opportunity to make it positive?
Well, a very interesting question. And the notion of greenhouse effect is negative is a misconception. Like I mentioned, it's a necessary phenomenon to help us alive. Well, basically your question is, how do we use the effect of greenhouse gas or greenhouse effect? Well, what you're saying is an increase in temperature. The increase in temperature really is very minimal in terms of energy generation. So I do not foresee, and the recent research also doesn't say much about the increasing impact of greenhouse effect. Really, you really have to overcome it. There's no positive side of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ameen Kamal, for your interesting presentation.